by the Western powers and the other powers of the world in these years of the crumbling around of the Ottoman Empire. Actually, the powers kept the Ottoman power in place for several decades because they couldn't decide who would take what. So it was started crumbling some 100 years before it actually ended, but since they didn't want the other guys to get what they want to drop, they kept it up and running. There was several occasions where the Western powers came to their help and to make sure that the other guys won't get it. So this is the Austrian, the big advantage of the place. First, it's like an oasis of, right at the chaotic, and then it has an elevator that takes you to the roof. So there's a beautiful view, different perspective over the city. If you want to come later on, you can check. You all the way from the Jaffa Gate. You go straight uphill here, it takes you to the Jaffa Gate. If you're going this way, you're getting to Temple Mountain. It's a street that goes from west to east, cutting the city to all its quarters. Okay, over here is the Muslim quarter. Over there is Temple Mountain. To our back is the Jewish quarter. Uphill, on the right side is the Christian quarter, and to the left side is the Armenian quarter, all the way by the Jaffa Gate. It's the Decamonity. Again, the footprint of the city is the Roman city of the 2nd century. And these are the streets of the Roman city, basically. So we're going to go up here, turn left. We won't be going into the plaza again where we were this morning. We're going to go around and over, take a different, from above, a different perspective of the Wailing Wall, and then we can climb up towards the Jewish quarter and explore it.
Wailing Wall, West Wall.
They have the same thing. Yeah, they have the same thing. Oh, yeah.
Rock, you move here, you have to be very sensitive and very careful with what you're doing. So we have different levels here. We have Roman, we have Muslim, we have Byzantine in between, and it's another interesting political issue is where do you stop? Why isn't the Muslim, why, shouldn't be like the target layer? Why do you have to go down all the way to the Roman? Why do you stop at the Roman and don't, it's like, because archaeological digging is always has a political aspect to it. There's no way around it. It's also a process of ruin. You can do it only once. This is why they're so careful, monitoring everything they're doing. It's a very, very, and in many cases, they would dig only one section of the site, very small portion of the site, and even if they're not limited by budget, they would prefer to leave the other parts of the site untouched. We know, pretty much archaeology. And the Jordanian army that attacked Israel and eventually, at the same time that the state of Israel was declared down in Tel Aviv by Ben Gurion in May 48, the Jordanians were able to capture the Jewish quarter. It was they took them as prisoners and then released them. In this case, in other cases they were all slaughtered, but in this case they were released a few weeks later, and the Jewish quarter was in ruins and under the Jordanian occupation for between 48 to 67. After 67, they wanted to build the Jewish quarter not the way it was, but they wanted to bring it to be not a museum, but a place people would live their life in, like in the other quarters. The old city of today, we said a few words about it. It's the same time that it is such a historically and religiously important place, it's also the place where people live in their life, and this is part of the beauty of it. Officially there are 20,000, but we think more. I think there are more like 30,000 living within this 1 square kilometer. The largest of the quarters is the Muslim one in terms of the numbers. The Jewish quarter is also quite large in numbers of the people who live here. And the Christian quarter has mostly institutions, so it's large in size, but not that many people live over there. The Armenians is the smallest. So they wanted to build it in a way that would bring in people to live here again. But they had a problem. Every time they dig for the foundations to build this new... we talked on the way coming up the stairs that it happened to us like in my parents' home in Tel Aviv. Right next door we had a grocery shop. For years, and then they wanted to shave it off to build a building, apartment building, and they started to dig down for the foundation 3 meters below the surface. They hit something. Every time you hit something, you have to bring in the authorities for salvation excavation. They call in the authorities. Usually what you expect in Tel Aviv area is like Listines, like 3,000 years. Over there they found something that is going back to the Neolithic period. It's like, you know, 3 meters below the surface. We had these neighbors throughout. They never made any noises, and then so they sort of took some pictures and took what they needed, and now there is a high rise there. So they, but here, when they dig down to build the Jewish quarter, they hit what apparently is a very upscale neighborhood of Jerusalem. Remember in the model up there, we saw these red roofs. This is the neighborhood of Jerusalem that was reserved for the priests working the temple. And they found amazing villas over here of priest family working the temple. And some of them are really beautifully preserved. Some of them you can still see the fire, the signs of the fire of the destruction of Jerusalem. You see the mosaic floors there, the rooms, ritual bath. We talked about the importance of the ritual bath, especially for those who are working the temple. They have to go there every day, they have to purify themselves. And so it's all there under the Jewish quarter. So they had a problem. What did they do? To bring in people, but still, you know, don't shave this off. But so what they did eventually is to move the parking, instead of the parking garages that were planned to be built under the apartment buildings, they moved the parking lot all the way to the outskirts of the quarter and dig down for the foundations, left the original sort of residents of the place in rest there, and build the contemporary buildings on these pillars that are now holding them. So in those buildings, when you're stepping upstairs, you're getting to the Cohen family, the Goldschmidt family. If you're going downstairs, you're going to the Cohen family from 2,000 years ago and all those. It's like, and that's how the Jewish quarter is arranged, with this sort of...
Can you just buy a place in here, or
you
have
can,
to be
yeah. At the
approved,
beginning,
or?
there was.
Okay, let's sit down.
To make some clarifications about that, but there is an institution here, a group of people that, you know, operating the temple is a very complicated business. It's not something that, and it's not being in use for about 2,000 years. So there is now this institution here that investigates, studies, trying to do to build the artifacts, to do the costumes, to do everything that has to do with the ritual. So when it happens, we'll be ready. It's not
Jewish quarter.
Yeah, we're getting there. 10 minutes is okay with the restroom? Okay, good.
Yeah, where's the restroom?
Yeah, we're getting there 10 minutes. Is okay? All right? I'll speed it up, okay? We're at the heart of the Jewish quarter is this plaza here, and what we're looking at is a very ancient new synagogue. It's a synagogue that was built first 250 years ago. Was ruined several times. The last time was in the 48 war. For many years, from 67, if you visited this place, from 67 to just a few months ago, when you came here, you saw only one of the arches still standing. And when the Israel returned to Jerusalem, together with the Jewish quarter, they thought and debated for 40 years how to rebuild this synagogue. They thought of a monumental sort of structure that would be in the center of many ideas. Eventually, after 40 years, they came back to the original plan, and it's still the way it was, more or less. And